Chapter 162 to 164. Dodo's kunai quickly pushed its way towards the apprehensive Sosetsu, while Dodo's face showed a mad glee. He could already see himself sitting in the daimyo's seat, controlling this rich country as he wished. The only problem was, Rei's hand grabbed Dodo's wrist, stopping his hand in its tracks, just when the tip of the kunai was only a few inches away from Sosetsu's chest. Dodo blinked uncomprehendingly, his brain momentarily refusing to process he was interrupted when he was so close to finishing his plans. "Ma, sorry, but this dude is under my protection," Rei said jovially, enjoying the bafflement on Dodo's face and the frozen smug smirk on Nadar's. Their surprise didn't last that long, however. Nadar quickly sprang forward, going for an attack on Rei, whom he judged to be the bigger threat than Sosetsu, while Dodo's eyes focused on his brother, showing a murderous, enraged glint. He clearly wanted to take advantage of Nadar, slowing Rei down, and finish Sosetsu off. Not that Rei would allow that. As Nadar's sword came dangerously close to the leisure Rei, he only deflected it with the back of his hand, sending the blade forcefully to the right, causing it to pull Nadar's arm alongside it while leaving his front wide open. He was wearing the newest product of Ringo on his hands. Silvery tight-fitting gloves weaved from very thin strands of chakra metal. In the end, they were still metal, but the sheer flexibility, lightness, and most importantly, toughness. These boys were supposed to be able to block a swing from one of the 7 swords of Kiri and still be in a serviceable shape. Ringo simply refused to stop forging, reforging them and getting help from the Uzumaki clan to create her first ever masterpiece. Only when the gloves withstood 10 brutal slashes from Samahata in her own hands did she reluctantly agree. She was somewhat satisfied with their performance. The best part? Unlike the 7 swords, the gloves could be mass-produced and modified. Yujito even asked for retractable claws in hers, which was a bit problematic since the gloves looked like silvery butler-style gloves from Rei's previous world. Ringo was an assassin, and it showed in her forging too. She wanted the gloves to be easily concealed, otherwise she would simply make tougher, stronger, sharper gauntlets instead of gloves that didn't have the capacity for that much material or seals on them. Rei quickly gave her the design to the butler gloves, and Ringo fell in love with them almost instantly. The sole problem was, they would stand out in the crowd, as there was no equivalent in the world, and once their future ninjas got famous for using them, they would be easily recognizable. That's where Tsunade came in and had the Bairi company mass-produce similar gloves from cotton, and started selling them, creating a new trend, at first in the world of nobility, and from there it spread to the merchants, and later to the normal people. She earned piles of Rio, made the company more famous for releasing such a fashion trend, and most importantly, made sure the gloves Ringo made would be nothing to bat an eyelid on even in the crowd of normal people. As for Nadar's sword, that pitiful excuse of a sword could only get duller the more it clashed with them. The single deflection already chipped the blade. Rei estimated that the sword could handle no more than 5 clashes before it broke in front of Nadar's eyes. Rei also didn't take the chance to use the created opening in Nadar's defense. He only used the momentary surprise of Nadar and stepped to the side, closer towards Sosetsu, while sending the approaching Dodo flying back with a light kick to his gut. Rei then stepped back, pushing Sosetsu closer to the wall. He was now in front of the Snow Daimyo. If either Nadar or Dodo wanted to get to Sosetsu, they first had to go through him. The first to attack was Nadar. He once again slashed the sword at Rei, who simply caught the blade in his gloved hand, slightly grimacing. So this is the strength produced by the chakra armor? Seeing his grimace, Nadar grinned. Despite his sword being caught, his mood actually improved as he let go of it, fluidly drawing a kunai from a pouch on his belt and slashed at Rei again. By that time, Dodo was already on his feet, rushing towards Rei's other side, also having a kunai in his hands. Apparently, he decided to first end Rei, and only after that focus on Sosetsu. Rei, who was holding the sword in his right hand, found himself in a disadvantageous position, as Nadar's kunai was approaching him from the right side and Dodo's from the left, while he only had his left hand free. Or at least, that was what Nadar and Dodo thought. Rei simply snapped his left hand towards the right, bitch-slapping Nadar away, sending his body spinning through the air until the wall stopped him. Instantly, Rei used his left foot to snap-kick Dodo's ship, causing him to lean more towards Rei's left side, which bought time for Rei to snap his left hand from the right towards the left and slap Dodo towards the ground as his grimace turned into a pitying frown. "Man, I know it is just an early version, but these armors are shit." He whinily drawled as he mentally noted Dodo was just a genin-level ninja, if taken into consideration his actual strength, without the armor, while Nadar was chunin at best. To think it would only increase your physique this much. Rei shook his head. If I had to compare the effect, it simply made them from cheap and small fishing boats into battleships with cannons. Still, as surprising the huge boost in their power it provides, it is a bit underwhelming for its actual cost. Rei could see why Kakashi could have a problem dealing with the guys, and even understood where their confidence in taking on the world came from. They could probably take on smaller ninja villages, with just a few teams of chunin. I will have to take a few armors and let Ringo, and may study them to find out how exactly they work. They might create a gear working on similar principles, but way cheaper. As it is now, the armors are just a costly shit. Wearing clothes made of diamonds would be cheaper than one of these suits. If I was in my old world, I bet I could afford a nuke for one of those. Ray inwardly chuckled, getting out of his pondering only when he heard Sosetsu's voice. Why, Dodo? Sosetsu whispered towards the groaning mess on the floor. Somehow, the man actually managed to stay awake after Ray bitch-slapped him with the chakra metal gloves. Should have hit stronger, shouldn't I? That guy's skull must be quite thick. Ray blinked at the sight, half expecting Dodo's neck to be already broken. It's always you. Dodo wheezed through the pain. Jonin would be completely fine eating such a hit, and Chunin could also shrug it off after some time, but Dodo was barely a genin level, and as such, it was not advisable to meet chakra metal with his cheek head-on. It was prone to cracking. What? Sosetsu awkwardly furrowed his brows, not understanding what his brother meant. What was it that Dodo lacked? Luxury money? And as shameful as it was for Sosetsu to admit it, even women, Dodo had everything he ever wished for. From birth, both of them were given only the best, and Sosetsu was actually glad that the work and burden of being the daimyo fell from him. It was a very tough job from time to time. There was no need to burden his brother with it. So then, why would his brother want to kill him? Didn't he have as comfortable a life as possible? I should have been the daimyo. I should have the weapon that you are building in my hands. The crystal ugh. Dodo started to get progressively louder, and Ray didn't like it, so he kicked the nuisance in his ribs, shutting him up. Crystal. Sosetsu's eyes widened. So he was after the spring generator? But what weapon? It is just a device to bring spring into this country. Sosetsu stood there, gazing at his brother in utter bafflement. I should rule. I am the better one of the two of us. I. Dodo continued madly mumbling through the pain. It was then Ray took Nadar's sword by its handle and ruthlessly slashed Dodo's throat, making the man look at him with wide, fearful eyes as he gurgled while blood poured out of him like a waterfall. Ray turned towards Sosetsu, who watched in horror as his brother's blood flowed on the floor and Dodo slowly died. Sorry. He would die anyway, and the longer it would take, the more awkward it would probably become for you, he shruggingly said, showing he was not sorry in the least, while looking towards Nadar, noting he had his neck broken. Sosetsu could only wryly smile at such logic. And killing my brother in cold blood in front of me is not awkward for you at all? Well then, it's time to go, I guess. Ray said after a while of letting Sosetsu stare at the lifeless corpse of his brother. He could at least give the man a bit of time to mourn the guy. Common courtesy, or whatever they call it. Sosetsu awkwardly grimaced but gave a short nod to Ray. On one hand, he was glad and grateful for Ray protecting him and making sure his daughter is fine. No matter his goal, without him, Dodo knew he would most likely die today, and Koyuki's life would be either turned upside down. If she survived, that is. On the other hand, though, Ray just killed his brother in front of him. Hatred, no. Sosetsu didn't feel hatred. Revenge? After seeing Ray's capabilities and knowing of his identity, that would be just a suicide. Honestly, slightly hoped Ray would show himself to the Yukikage, who would recognize him and back off. Sosetsu knew this was just his wishful thinking. Ray of Yuzora had no available description at all, so even if he stepped forward and introduced himself, the Yukikage would either get a bit wary or laugh him off on the spot. He would nevertheless think he is an imposter either way, though. There were just so many rumors about his supposed look, and Ray didn't fit even one of them. He was not a bulky 3 meters tall giant capable of crushing skulls with his hands, nor was he an old, unassuming expert with a sharp, cold gaze. In short, the number of his rumored appearances was off the charts. As such, the number of imposters also grew. There were only a handful of people knowing how Ray really looked, and most of these had his secrecy seal on them anyway. Sosetsu was actually surprised he felt only a slight apprehension towards Ray. 2 days, that's how long it took Ray to persuade Sosetsu that handing over his country is actually a very good deal for him and the people of the Land of Snow. The number of benefits Ray could provide. And yet, he killed my brother. So why am I not resenting him for it? Is it because Dodo tried to kill me? Was I always such a cold person? Oi, Sosetsu. Ray called out again, snapping Sosetsu out of his thoughts. Huh. I said let's go. I still have work to do, you know? I promised to keep you safe, after all. Ray rolled his eyes at the slowpoke. What do you mean, work to do? The people who wanted me dead are finished, no? Sosetsu asked in a confused tone, making Ray laugh as his amused gaze landed on the bewildered older man. Do you really think they would smugly march here, attempt to assassinate the daimyo, and take over the country with just the 3 of them? Ray's eyes sparkled in an "are you an idiot" kind of light. I mean, sure, they were pretty stupid, but nah, they were not that brain dead. Of that, I can assure you. As if to prove his words, numerous huge explosions rattled the capital city of the Land of Snow, sending the entire city into chaos. Sosetsu's eyes widened in horror as he quickly jumped towards the closest window, looking outside of it. The capital was on fire. What they came here to do is to overthrow you. Rei's leisure voice resounded from behind Sosetsu, who was getting more and more worried about the people of the city. What is going on? He hurriedly turned towards Rei with a desperate expression, demanding answers, and Rei happily obliged. This was not some pitiful assassination attempt, where you are finished by getting rid of the assassin. Yukikage himself would not make his way here just to assassinate you. That kind of thinking is just silly, isn't it? No, this, Rei smiled widely, is the start of a bona fide civil war. Chizuru Kagaya swiped the sharpened bone that was previously her forearm through the neck of her unsuspecting victim, quietly laying his body onto the floor, while making sure to keep a hand on his lips until he stopped trashing. This is so tedious. She heard a quiet whine from next to her as her partner, Kurumi Uzumaki, also laid the dead body of her target onto the ground before they continued on their way through the dark halls. And look, a few droplets of blood fell onto my kimono. That's just awful, don't you think, Chi-chan? Kurumi whisper screamed. How did this woman manage to get into the stealth corps again? Chizuru mentally lamented her misfortune of being partnered with the unceasing chatterbox with a mile-wide temper for this mission. Chizuru's expression soured. Oh yeah, I took her in because of her superior concealment seals. Silly me. The duo sneakily continued through the hallway, using shadows and mostly sticking to the ceiling to get past the patrols before ambushing them from behind and taking them out without setting off any alarms. Just like that, they were making a steady advance deeper into this base. It was not only them either. 10 teams of 2 were currently sweeping through the base. The stealth corps was Chizuru's pride. When Rei started making the basic structure of his future village, she offered to lead a kind of ANBU-like organization, but what she had in mind was a bit different. It took a whole lot of proving herself capable before Rei gave her the position too. There was no way she would not be proud of it and develop it the best she could. The stealth corps was for ninjas who didn't put much value on flashy jutsu. It was a place where skill with weapons and mastery at stealth was the most appreciated. That didn't mean they didn't have any flashy jutsu of mass destruction under their belt. On the contrary, firepower considered, each of them was required to be able to obliterate a small building. But the members of the stealth corps trained a lot differently than what the ninja villages generally offered their troops. This was all in order to be able to finish whatever mission in the stealthiest manner possible. After all, they were ninjas, and staying quiet was quite a valuable skill. Chi-chan, I found the main room. Chizuru almost flinched at the volume of her partner's whisper. She really had no idea how they managed to stay undiscovered with Kurumi being so loud all the time. It must be some kind of weird seal, I am sure of it. She helplessly sighed. Not many Uzumaki entered the stealth corps. In fact, so far, she had only 2 Uzumaki working under her. This was primarily because the Uzumaki clan created their own division. Chizuru called bullshit. They are just so damn loud, there is no way for them to get into the stealth corps, and they clearly know it, so they don't even try. Komeon, ki. Or at least, most of them do. Chizuru deadpanned at Kurumi, who was urging her to order action. Frankly, Chizuru knew she was a bit too harsh on Kurumi. The woman was the best she had. If Kurumi didn't want to be found, nobody in the stealth corps would be able to notice her, even if she was in plain sight. Considering the stealth corps were the best trackers Yuzushio currently had, and that was without Kurumi using her special concealment seals. Her hiding skills were just that absurd. Growing up as a thief on the streets in the capital city of the Land of Wind certainly had given the girl the necessary skills. Fine, let's take them out, Chizuru quietly said, noticing Kurumi's eyes glint as a very thin metal wire, guided by chakra, started to sneakily drag itself from her sleeves. It snaked an inch above the walls, reaching the ceiling where it continued its way above the unsuspecting Yuki ninjas, who were currently in the middle of coordinating the communication. Since she was a close-range combatant, the first to attack was Chizuru. She sent 5 bone bullets from the tips of her fingers at the Yuki ninjas in the room, instantly killing 2 while 3 managed to lean away on sheer reflex, already swiping a kunai in preparation for a fight, and die right after that as Kurumi's razor-sharp wire came down from the ceiling and quickly enwrapped around their necks, pulling them up, separating their heads from their bodies before both parts fell onto the floor with an audible thud. Ahaha, aren't these Yuki ninjas a bit too easy? There was not even one jonin guarding them. Kurumi loudly exclaimed, no longer worried about whispering, which only made Chizuru groan at her, as they both walked into the room and shut down all communication channels of the Yuki ninjas. Well, they are a small village. Their jonins are most likely fighting in the city. Also, Chizuru looked at the corpses and her lips twitched. Why do they wear full-body heavy armor made from metal if they leave their necks and faces mostly exposed? She mumbled to herself before a man appeared in the middle of the door. Lady Chizuru, he slightly bowed. The building is cleared. The communication headquarters of the Kaioshin forces is no more. We have 1 injured and no casualties. Chizuru only smiled and nodded as she activated the communication seal, starting to speak the second it connected. "We are done here. Their communication is down. You can go in." She turned the scroll off, turning towards Kurumi, who gave her a winning pose while happily looting the corpses. Chizuru blankly blinked before chuckling at the scene. Thief indeed. She shook her head and turned towards the man. "I guess this is it for us. Let's go home. Give the order to retreat." The main defensive force assigned to the protection of the capital of the Land of Snow was the Uzumaki clan. The second the Yukikage walked into the daimyo's palace, 10 members of the Uzumaki Special Division, the sealing monks, activated massive seals on 10 various spots around the capital city, enveloping it in a massive complex sealing barrier called Homeland Protection of the 10, which would prevent anyone living in the city for more than 5 years from getting hurt for the next 10 hours. As for why 5 years, it was a necessity. The ninjas of the KaiOshin are expected to live in the village. It is a rule there, meaning this way no ninja of the KaiOshin would be affected and protected by the barrier. Even the infiltrators spend at most a year away from the village. And while this meant that not all of the citizens of the capital would be protected, the bigger chunk of them had their safety guaranteed, even if an explosion tag went off on their position, so the Uzushio forces could fight freely without worrying much about the original inhabitants. The members of the sealing monks were all grandmasters in the sealing arts. That was one of the entry requirements. They were also all Uzumaki clan members, so that meant they had to be grandmasters by the Uzumaki standards. In recent years, many of the Uzumaki reached this stage thanks to personal tutoring from Rei's clones, which only earned him even more respect among the Uzumaki clan. Honestly, Rei thought it would be a damn shame if he disregarded this aspect of the Uzumaki clan. They simply could not stop themselves from studying sealing. Even someone who never ever saw a seal was drawn to it, and naturally curious about its working. Even if an Uzumaki was lazy, dumb, or hyperactive, they would still dutifully study sealing for hours on end. Rei just used this trait of their clan to make sure his future village had an ample number of sealing grandmasters, and many more who strived to reach that stage. For now, there were only 34 of them, but even that number was ridiculous considering other villages would be happy to have even one in their employ. As for the cringe-worthy name of the division, Mei thought it would fit, but her suggestion was quickly rejected by almost all Uzumaki. In the end, Mei sullenly rejected any other name, making the name-choosing process to be delayed. At this time, Mei persuaded most of the Uzumaki kids, that were around 10, that the name Sealing Monks was incredible. It wasn't even that hard. Some sweets and a few books on elementary sealing and voila. The kids were bothering their parents to no end, trying to push for the name Sealing Monks. The frustrated parents tried to push for the name also if only to stop their children from constantly annoying them, which created pressure on the leaders of the Uzumaki clan. And in the end, Kaya Uzumaki, the newest leader of the Uzumaki clan, was forced to name the division the Sealing Monks, giving the smug Mei a glare with a sour expression. Pakura, who was crouching on a rooftop of a building next to Ringo, raised her eyes towards the shimmering sky with a bit of an excited grin, ignoring the numerous explosions going off in the close vicinity. "Okay, guys, the KaiOshin started their attack. Our Sealing Monks have done their part in making sure not one of them can get away or injure anyone of importance, and the Stealth Corps cut off enemy communication. It's time for us to join the fray," Pakura ordered, making the air turn serious around her entire force of 100 Jonin-ranked ninjas, who started running towards their first target. This was the strike force composed of 100 Jonins formerly from Kiri that fought under Rei's command on the Nagori Isles. The ones that were sent there to be sacrificed. When the war ended, not even 150 were left of the original 200. So when the time came and Rei found himself in need of some high-level ninjas, he quickly remembered those outcasts that didn't quite fit in the political climate of KaiOshin. Needless to say, it didn't take much enticement for more than 130 of those still alive to join him. All it took was to promise them to take in their families, as well, and KaiOshin gained over 100 new rogue ninjas overnight. And what shitstorm that was! Pakura was a bit nervous. She was supposed to be the future Jonin commander, and that was why she was leading this mission, while Ringo was here only to make sure not one of her ninjas lost their life during the mission. Something every single member of the strike force was grateful for. Normally, having to face over 1,000 Yuki ninjas, who were around Chunin rank with some Jonins mixed in, with a force of only 100 Jonin would be called a suicide, but with communications disabled, and the Yuki ninjas currently split up into multiple groups of 20 all over the capital city. Pakura's job was to simply go from group to group, annihilating them in an orderly manner while they could not relay any messages. This was not 1,000+ versus 100 kind of battle. This was over 50 times 100 versus 20. Shortly, the strike force reached its first target, 20 Yuki ninjas clad in the cheaper, older type of chakra armor. Before the distressed Yuki ninjas even spotted something was wrong, a hail of kunai descended on their position, making 5 of them into a pincushion, while the other 15 were skilled enough to mostly dodge the initial shot. "Who are you?" One of them shouted, but received only silence in return as the 100 Jonin of the strike force jumped towards them. The battle itself was a quick affair. Yuki ninjas were Chunin level and vastly outnumbered by the excited strike force. Simply, it was a slaughter for the Yuki ninjas. The ninjas of the strike force were war veterans used to fight together, used to face much stronger people, and used to use tactics to overcome greater odds. In comparison, this was not hard. The more the strike force fought, the more its members realized. There is no excitement in this. This was supposed to be my first mission in almost a year, but why is it so boring? They internally screamed as they ganged up on the poor Yuki ninjas, who wanted to do nothing more than to scream at these cheaters. Okay, let's move on, Pakura said as she finished off the last of the group while Riley sighing. She was a bit peeved she could not use her Scorch release and show her real might, but her Kunai would have to do for now. Really, this was supposed to be the very first mission for these ninjas, and Pakura was sure all of them wanted to show off. They just had no idea Conan's plan would make it so easy but tedious for them. We still have a few tens of these groups left until the work is done. The entire group could think only one thing. Why the hell did I volunteer for this? Oh yes, I wanted a bit of excitement, damn it. At the end of the day, what was supposed to be a civil war ended in overwhelming favor of the daimyo of the land of snow and Rei. Only a very few of the KasiCair ninjas survived, and even then they were all captured. Now, it was time to march into the KasiCair itself.